Okay, guys, we're going to introduce you to Jamie Maize. He is our resident amp guru, tube whisperer, avid shoe wearer. What other titles do you have? Bandana Bandito. I actually thought he was bald for the longest time because I've never seen him without his bandana, and one day he actually came in without it, and it was surprising. He has hair. It's
just really frustrating when you're trying to work on an amp and it's all, look, it's the price of vanity. You got to do
Yeah, well, you know. What can you say? So tell everybody a little bit about your background, what got you into amp repair, your history, and
well,
the mental illness thing.
I took my father's stereo apart when I was 5 years old, and instead of receiving a thorough beating for that, he said, "You know how to put that back together?" And I said, "No." He goes, "Well, let's do that." So that's kind of what sparked it. And then through a childhood of experimentation of other electrical things, like discovering that you can't plug a wire into a 9-volt DC flashlight and plug it into the wall without bad things happening. So a lot of things like that, and then you get steering in the right direction. But no, my beginnings in tinkering really started with my first guitar, like at 13, and having to figure out how all that worked and make it playable. When playing on a friend's guitar that was so much better, and going, okay, so I know that all of this stuff here has a purpose, and so doing adjustments on guitar, and then realizing that I love tube amps better than any of the solid state stuff that I was hearing, and then of course my father's background as an amp technician and electronics technician all the way back in Vietnam, so that's just really his guidance in kind of steering that passion, and that of course the difference between the two of us is that he's not a player, and so for me it's to be able to go, okay, here's the tone we're after. Being able to speak that musician. One thing Tad always said
requires its own.
He's like, why does it always sound like when I talk to these guitar guys that we're like at a buffet? He goes, we're talking about electronics, and you want to talk about chocolatey tone, but
creamy mids.
Yeah, so understanding the that language and that desire that really doesn't. We use so many words for it, that mojo. My amp's lost its thing. Well, a lot of that translates. I mean, all of it translates into some very real electronic happenings inside of an amplifier, and so understanding how tubes function and how all that works together, and the balance of voltages, and so it's all intertwined and connected, and so there's a passion for tone within me, and that's why I joke with people. I say I don't really play guitar, I play amp, and because I'd like to think that I may not be the best skilled player at the jam, but I'm going to have better tone than anybody else there.
There you go.
So I might only be able to play one note, but you're going to love it.
So what I lack in talent, I make up for with volume.
Oh, that's dangerous. Decibels are a whole other subject. You can't group all that together. But yeah, so I guess the best way to put it is I have this disease, and I'm just working it out. And I get to do that and meet a lot of really cool people and work on a lot of really cool equipment in the process.
Could you kind of trace back the history of an amp when you pull it apart, and you see where people have worked on it in the past, and you track back and you try and
definitely see some interesting things when you open them up and you go, okay, this one done in a green room 30 minutes before go time. There's duct tape in here, and there's some definitely questionable repairs that have been done.
The hotel modifications between gigs on the road.
Which always was the intent of, hey, when we get off the road, we're going to have this, and it never got done.
Fixed, because you're off the road for 2 days.
Wow, that lasted for how many years with that repair that was
a lot of that stuff.
Putting your life in danger every moment that you plug the amp in.
Right.
But just you mentioned history, not just history of repairs, but that's part of that passion also, going back to so many early circuits and looking at the evolution of tone in amps, and in some ways in areas where, at least in my opinion, things went really wrong. Historically speaking, you look at the simplicity of a circuit like this is one of ours. This is our small block, and though this isn't any kind of clone or anything like that off of an existing circuit, the simplicity of the layout and the design really is, it finds its roots in some of the most awesome tone of our past in amp history. And it's amazing to me to look at how we get so far off track in those builds of because we have the technology. I can do 80 different relays and switches in an amp, and I can get this Swiss Army knife effect of amps. Yeah. When in reality,
the Swiss Army knife did a lot of things, but didn't do any of them well.
Yeah, exactly. And we can take something relatively simple from a technological standpoint and really have it be what the player has been after all along. So that's what's exciting, is to get that full picture, to know where we came from,
right,
and to be able to look at all the different directions that things have gone in, and then really pare it down from a player perspective to go, if this is what you're after, why don't we do that and do it better than anybody else? So this just happens to be a prime example of that, what's on the bench right now, which we're just doing a little bit of refinement to, and probably find a point eventually where we're really happy with it and go, okay.
Or that point where we finally say, all right, fine, we give up. It's good enough. No, we never get there. We're always trying to make it
the other
better.
disease with the amp builder is that we're never really 100% satisfied with it. But that's what keeps us striving to do something even better. So.
Yeah, this one's cool. This one is this one kind of derived out of demand from players asking for a really super clean, high headroom, grab and go combo they can throw pedals in front of, and they can throw it on the back of a Vespa and go to the gig. So it's like 20. I think it's 26 pounds what we weighed it at. Really super clean, pedal platform. It's a cool amp.
I'm trying to picture it on the back of a Vespa now.
We'll find a picture and Photoshop it. So cool. A lot of people know that Bluesman Vintage builds guitars. Some of you know that we're building amps and building pedals and a few other things, but a lot of that's not real common knowledge. But the thing that many people don't know about is the amount of repairs and restoration we do here, both on the guitar side of things, but also in amplifiers. Jamie Maize here is a fantastic repair guy. He's fixing stuff that even the manufacturers of some of these amps are saying, you know what, man, that's a lost cause, throw it away. Jamie's getting into them and looking at them and going, nah, we can fix this. It's got to be creative, but we can do it, so.
Often,
yeah, we've had some really interesting things. Let's talk a little bit about some of the really bizarre, interesting repairs. I know you did something recently with a Blues Junior that had to be heavily modified to make it function better. And
well, yeah, I mean,
odd things.
Whenever you get into mass-produced amplifier products, that they seem like they've been designed just on the verge of being fairly decent. Mm-hmm. But at some point in that process, instead of consulting with players, they consulted with accountants and went, no, we're going to go this route. There's a lot of those platforms. The Blues Junior is a great example that over time those weaknesses in the production decisions show, especially in that particular amp and also others in that series. The sockets being mounted on a PCB, a lot of those solder points just through the normal wear and tear of tubes being taken in and out, those solder points really suffer. And considering it's a combo amp and you have a lot of vibration, everything happening there. So in that particular case, instead of continuing to try and make repairs to broken traces on that board, just completely eliminated it, hardwired an adapter board in there with actual hardwired sockets into that. And it's not an undertaking I would want to do or volunteer to do every day,
right.
But it really made a huge difference in hardwiring that into the circuit. So it's kind of a hybrid. You have half of that amp that is a PCB product, but the output section all being hand wired, and it was really necessary in that particular situation. And it made a huge difference. Just the stability of the amplifier, and actually, surprisingly enough, it was a noticeable tone difference in just having that hardwired as opposed to the traces on a PCB.
That's cool.
The voltages were more stable, and the actual transfer of the signal into the power section was it just had a different level of clarity to it. So it made a big difference. So we run into stuff like that, and that was just instead of an amp that really probably could have been at the end of its usefulness.
Right.
It's out being used right now, being enjoyed. So
it probably will outlast most of the rest of them.
Yeah,
out there
exactly. That's one of them that when it left, I said, if you ever decide to get rid of it, I get first dibs because I know what it's capable of now.
It's stable now.
Actually, the thought there was, well, half of it's already hand wired, so we might as well get it back in and do the rest of it. But so we've got all kinds of repairs in that respect. We're not afraid to get creative to make it right, and in addition to that,
we do a lot of modifications.
Exactly. From the end of the spectrum of going, and we have amps that come in every week that don't need anything major. They just need a little bit of love, as we say. They just need general service, and you have a new set of tubes put in, you have the bias set right, and just cleaned up a little bit so that they're ready to get back out there. So we do everything from that simple that takes really an hour's worth of time to take care of, all the way into jobs that really do require that creativity. Or for instance, I get jobs that come in where a guy says, hey, I've been doing some research about my amp online, and whereas sometimes that can get into some dangerous territory, you can really decipher what that player is shooting for and go, okay, this, your choice of a mod kit that you found online for sale, not a bad idea. We can take that. I would do this in addition to it, and then really consult, get headed in the right direction. And that's not a troubleshooting malfunction with the amp. That's just someone saying, hey, I believe that I can get better tone. Let's move in that direction. So we do everything from the simple retube and bias to heavier, more involved repairs and modifications. And it's a matter of listening to the player and going, okay,
right.
what are we after here, and considering especially what's your primary guitar. There's so many things that the benefit of being a player and an amp technician, when you meld those together and you understand that language, and you go, okay, what do you really, whatever creative words you want to use to try and describe what direction you want to go in, we can do that. Yeah, we can figure that out. And I enjoy in those final stages of tweaking on an amp to actually have that player here with the amp.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at these final elements of what tube to put in V1. We've got a great selection of new old stock vintage tubes that we can go, hey, in your particular amp with your particular instrument, let's try these 3 or 4 and see what really brings out the elements that you're after.
Right.
So very hands-on and very much considering the player and looking at all those different variables and elements. They go, what are you after? It's not about what I think sounds great with your amp. It's you. What do you want out of your instrument and amp combination?
Very cool. Very cool. Yes, so that's one of the service things that we offer here at Bluesman Vintage is not only amp repair, amp manufacturing, but amp tailoring to your needs. We bring in your rig. We've gotten with players many times to where we go through multiple speakers in a cabinet, or in their cabinet, or with their amp, or like you said, multiple tubes. We're trying to help you find the tone that's in your head. That's one of the really cool things that we do here at Bluesman, because we want you happy with your rig more so than us. It doesn't matter. We're not the ones playing it every night. So come by and see us. Check us out online. You can find us at bluesmanvintage.com.